Warm lights blinked along the roofline like the house was breathing on its own. Inside, the music stayed low, the kind that's meant to sound effortless. At Revenge Sins, we've heard a lot of family stories that begin with shouting. This one didn't. It began with something quieter, almost polite, and that's what made it sting. Her name is Isabel Crowe, and she's the daughter who learned to shrink without being asked. The night she stopped shrinking wasn't a courtroom or a funeral. It was Christmas Eve, in a living room where everyone else had a place. This is the moment she keeps coming back to. I carried the fruitcake with both hands because it was heavy and because it gave me something to do with my arms. The smell of orange peel and toasted nuts followed me up the front steps. I'd used my grandmother's recipe, the one written in her tight little handwriting, the one that always made the kitchen smell like safety. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in a cream sweater that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle. "You're late. I'm early." I kept my voice even and stepped inside. She didn't move out of the way so much as turn and expect me to follow. The house looked like a magazine spread. Every surface had something placed on it like it belonged there. Candles, garlands, a bowl of ornaments that didn't look touched. My sister Juliet came in from the dining room, one hand resting on her stomach. She was so far along that her walk had that careful, practiced sway. People pretend not to notice. "There she is." Juliet sang out, too bright. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," I answered, and it came out softer than I meant. Juliet leaned in for a quick hug. Her perfume hit first. "You made the fruitcake." "I did." "That's sweet," she told the room, as if it was a performance everyone had agreed to watch. My mother pointed toward the kitchen with 2 fingers. "Put it in there. The catered desserts are already set. I thought we could have both." She looked at me like I'd suggested we serve dinner on the floor. "We'll see." I took the fruitcake to the kitchen, set it on the counter, then walked back out, wiping my palms on my coat without thinking. My eyes landed on the fireplace. Stockings hung in a neat line, thick knit, identical style, each with a name tag: Henry, Vivian, Juliet. Even my brother-in-law had one. At the end, a smaller stocking hung slightly higher, brand new, the tag crisp: Baby Crowe, coming soon. My gaze moved back and forth, once, then again, slower this time. My throat tightened like it was trying to swallow a stone. My mother followed my line of sight and sighed. Not like she felt bad, more like I was making the night harder than it needed to be. "We ran out of space," she told me. "It's just symbolic." I didn't answer. I stood there long enough that my sister's smile faltered. Juliet gave a little laugh, nervous and quick. "It's not like you need a stocking. You're an adult." I kept my eyes on the mantel. "There's room for one more." My mother's voice dropped, calm in that way that always meant she was in control. "Don't start." A brief hush settled over the living room, the music still playing under it, the tree lights blinking like nothing had happened. From where we stood, it was easy to see how clean the exclusion was. No argument, no scene. Just a missing name, dressed up as holiday decor. I finally looked at my mother. "You really did it." She didn't blink. "Go wash your hands. Dinner in 20 minutes." I turned toward the hallway, and my sister's eyes tracked me like she was afraid I might ruin the picture. I walked past the framed family photos, the ones where everyone looked like they belonged, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not rage, not even sadness. Exactly. More like a door closing, slow and solid, the kind that doesn't reopen. And still, I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. At least, I did for a few more minutes. If you want more stories like this one, you can subscribe to Revenge Sins and stay with us. In the bathroom, I ran the water until it turned hot, stared at my hands, and tried to make my breathing sound normal. Then I opened my coat, felt the edge of the envelope against my ribs, and reminded myself I hadn't come here to beg for a chair. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was a mistake. The chapel smelled like lilies and floor cleaner, sharp and sweet at the same time. I arrived early, like I always did. My grandmother used to say early wasn't polite, it was respectful. I stood near the entrance, folding and unfolding the program in my hands, watching people drift in. My mother was already there, clipboard tucked under her arm, whispering instructions to the funeral director like she was running a conference, not burying her own mother. She glanced at me. Stand here. Greet people. I thought I'd sit with the family. She didn't look up. The front row is for immediate family. The words landed heavy, not loud, not cruel, just final. I swallowed. I was close to her. That made her pause. She lifted her head slowly, like she was deciding whether this was worth addressing. Juliet is flying in from Boston, she said. She needs the space. You understand. I nodded because that's what I did. I understood. Always. I took my place by the door and shook hands with people who smelled like cold air and perfume. Some hugged me too tightly. Some squinted, searching for my name. Then a man in a gray suit stopped in front of me. Kind eyes. Firm handshake. Miss Crowe. I'm David Morris, your grandmother's attorney. Something in his voice made my stomach tighten. She left something specifically for you, he continued, lowering his voice. But I'll need time to verify a few things first. My mouth opened, then closed again. What kind of things? He offered a small, careful smile. Details. I'll be in touch. He stepped away before I could ask anything else. I watched him walk down the aisle toward the front row, toward my mother and sister, and felt the distance between us stretch wider than the room itself. I stayed by the door until the service ended. I stayed quiet. And I went home thinking maybe that was all there was to it. I was 22 when my mother sat us down at the dining table and told us she was sick. She kept her voice steady, like she'd practiced it. Early stage, treatable. The doctors were optimistic. She reached for my father's hand and squeezed it once. Hard. Then let go. Juliet was home from school, books stacked neatly at her feet. She kept nodding like she was listening, but her eyes were already somewhere else. My father cleared his throat. Someone's going to need to stay close. Appointments? Recovery? The room went quiet. Juliet shifted in her chair. My program won't let me defer. You know that. My mother turned toward me. You're more flexible. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what flexible meant. I just nodded and felt something inside me lock into place. I can stay. I offered. I can help. My mother smiled, relief washing over her face. Good girl. So I stayed. I switched to online classes at first. Then fewer classes. Then none. I learned how to keep track of medication schedules, how to drive in silence, how to cook meals she couldn't taste. I cleaned the bathroom floor more times than I can count. I held her hair back until there was no hair left to hold. Juliet called every few days. Sometimes she sounded guilty. Sometimes she sounded busy. Mostly she sounded proud. When my mother went into remission, everyone called it a miracle. Cards arrived, flowers, casseroles from neighbors I barely knew. One night, I brought up school again. I waited until after dinner, when the dishes were drying on the rack. I was thinking about finishing my degree. My father didn't look up from the paper. You're 24 now. What's the point? My mother reached for my arm. You've done so much already. Let's not push. Juliet graduated 4 years later. The party was loud and full and catered. 60 people at least. A banner with her name stretched across the backyard fence. She looked radiant in her dress, glass raised high. I couldn't have done this without my parents. Applause followed her words. I stood near the sink, rinsing plates as they piled up. An aunt leaned in, voice lowered. You must be so proud of her. I am, I answered, and meant it. I stayed until the last guest left. I wiped down counters, stacked chairs, folded the banner carefully like it mattered. Later that night, I flipped through a photo album on the living room shelf, looking for something to mail to my grandmother for her birthday. Page after page of Juliet, dance recitals, graduation gowns, smiling group shots. I found 3 pictures of myself, one as a baby, one in kindergarten, one half cut off at Christmas. My shoulder blurred near the edge. I closed the book gently and sat there for a while, hands in my lap, listening to the house settle around me. I brought the photo album with me the next time I visited my grandmother. She was in her chair by the window, a blanket folded neatly over her knees, glasses perched low on her nose. The television was on but muted, closed captions rolling by like they were talking to someone else. "I was looking for a picture for your birthday card," I told her, setting the album on the table. "I couldn't find many of us." She smiled without looking up. "That sounds about right." I opened the album between us and flipped slowly, giving her time to see what I saw. Juliet's life laid out in glossy order. Achievements, milestones, proof. My grandmother tapped the page with one finger. She's always been easy to photograph. I turned the page. "There are 3 of me." She leaned closer, squinting. "3 more than you think," she said, then shook her head. "Still not enough." I closed the album and rested my hands on top of it. Did I do something wrong? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for my hand and held it, warm and steady. "Your mother has a secret," she said quietly, "and until she faces it, she'll keep punishing you instead of herself." The words sat there between us, not sharp, not dramatic, just heavy. "I don't understand." She squeezed my fingers. "You don't have to yet." I tried to laugh it off. "She's just hard on me, that's all." My grandmother's eyes lifted to mine. Serious now. "Hard is when someone wants you better. This is something else." I looked down at our hands, at how small mine still felt inside hers. Why wouldn't she just say it? Because saying it would cost her something. She answered, "And your mother hates paying prices she didn't choose." I pulled my hand back, not angry, just overwhelmed. "You're making it sound worse than it is." She nodded slowly. "That's what I told myself for years." We sat in silence after that. The captions on the television kept moving. A car passed outside, tires hissing on pavement. When I stood to leave, she brushed my cheek with her thumb. "No matter what you find out one day, remember this. You were never the problem." I nodded, promised I'd call, promised I'd come by again soon. In the car, I sat for a long moment before turning the key, her words echoing softly, refusing to settle into anything simple. The call came 3 nights before Christmas, just after 7, while I was folding laundry on my bed. My phone buzzed against the mattress. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go, then answered on the last ring. "Miss Crowe. This is David Morris." His voice was the same as it had been at the funeral. "Careful. Measured. I'm calling because the waiting period has ended," he continued. "Your grandmother's instructions were very clear. She wanted you to have time before receiving this." I sat down slowly. "Receiving what?" "There's an envelope held in a private file," he said, "separate from the estate. I can meet you tomorrow if that works." I agreed without thinking. After I hung up, I stared at the folded shirts in my hands, then set them aside. I didn't finish the laundry. His office was quiet the next afternoon. No music, no receptionist chatter, just the hum of the heater and the sound of paper shifting somewhere behind a door. David led me into a small conference room and placed a thick envelope on the table between us. Red wax sealed the flap. My grandmother's handwriting stretched across the front, neat and unmistakable. "For Isabel, when you're ready to know the truth." She left a note as well. David said, sliding a small card toward me. "She asked that you read it first. I picked it up. The card trembled slightly in my fingers. Read it when you're ready to face what I couldn't say out loud. Her words read, I'm sorry it took me so long. I love you. Always. I closed my eyes for a second, then reached for the envelope. Inside were several documents, stacked carefully. A letter in my grandmother's handwriting, a laboratory report with an embossed seal, pages clipped together with a header that read, Accredited Laboratory, followed by a chain of custody summary. David leaned back, giving me space. I read the letter first. My darling Isabel, I should have told you years ago. I was afraid of what it would do to you, and afraid of what it would do to your mother. But silence has its own cruelty. She wrote about suspicion, about watching, about finally deciding she needed proof. 2 years before she died. She had samples collected, hair from my brush, a glass my father used at dinner. She described the process in plain language, like she didn't want me doubting it later. The report sat heavy in my hands. Probability of paternity 0. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, like the words might rearrange themselves if I was patient enough. They're authentic, David said quietly. Everything was handled by the book. I nodded, though my head felt far away from the rest of me. She confronted your mother. The letter continued. She begged me not to tell anyone. She said it would destroy the family. I promised to stay silent while I lived. I will not keep that promise now. I pressed my thumb into the paper until it bent. She refused to tell me who your biological father is. My grandmother wrote, That secret belongs to her alone. David cleared his throat softly. You don't have to take this with you today. I do. He slid the envelope closer. If you need anything, time, copies, clarification. I gathered the papers, stacking them carefully, like order might keep them from spilling into everything else. On the drive home, I set the envelope on the passenger seat. I didn't touch it at stoplights. I didn't open it again. That night, I placed it in my nightstand drawer and closed it with both hands. Christmas was coming, and somehow, I knew it wouldn't wait for me to be ready. My father's study smelled like leather and old paper. It always had. Even as a kid, it felt like a room I wasn't meant to linger in. He sat behind the desk, glasses in his hand, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he had a headache he didn't want to name. Outside the door, I could hear Juliet laughing with someone in the living room. The sound stopped as soon as the door closed. You wanted to talk, he said, finally looking up. I nodded and stayed standing. There isn't a stocking with my name on it. He shifted in his chair. Your mother handles those things. I know. I waited, then added, and you're fine with it. Silence stretched. He set his glasses down carefully, lining them up with the edge of the desk. It's Christmas, he said. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. My hand slid into my coat pocket, fingers brushing the edge of the envelope. I didn't pull it out. Not yet. You've always known something was off, I said. Haven't you? His jaw tightened. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a moment, like the answer might be written there. When you were 5, he began, slow and deliberate. You needed stitches. The doctor mentioned your blood type. It didn't make sense. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. Your mother and I are both AB positive, he went on. You were O negative. The words landed clean and sharp. I checked the records, he admitted. Hospital files, lab notes. I even talked to a specialist. Quietly, I swallowed. And your mother said it was a lab error. He replied, She said mistakes happen. She said not to overthink it. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something like shame flickered across his face. I wanted to believe her. So you did, I said. He nodded once. Knowing for sure would have meant tearing everything apart. My chest tightened. So you chose not to know? I chose to keep the family together. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped for years. When Mom got sick, he didn't wait for me to finish. Juliet was younger, her future mattered, and mine didn't. He didn't argue that one. His hands folded together on the desk, fingers interlaced too tightly. "You stayed," he said quietly. "You were strong. I stayed because you asked me to." He looked down. She was mine. The words sat there, bare and unsoftened. From the hallway came the clink of glasses. My mother's voice rising, controlled and pleasant. Christmas continued without us. I straightened, feeling steadier than I expected. "I have something you need to see." His eyes flicked to my pocket. He didn't stop me when I reached inside. Not this time. Dinner looked like something staged for a photo. The good plates, the cloth napkins folded into sharp little triangles, candles down the center of the table that made everyone's face look softer than it deserved. I sat at the far end, close enough to be included, far enough to be ignored. My mother kept redirecting the conversation like a traffic cop. Juliet's husband talked about work. Juliet laughed on cue, one hand on her belly, the other resting on her water glass. My father's study door clicked behind him a few minutes later. He came in with his expression already set, calm and distant, like nothing had happened upstairs. He pulled out his chair, smoothed his napkin across his lap, and nodded at me once, not warm, not hostile, just acknowledgement. My mother rose halfway from her seat, clapped her hands once. "All right. Before we eat. Henry wants to say something." My father lifted his glass. The room quieted the way it always did when he spoke. Even Juliet's husband stopped mid-bite. He cleared his throat. "Christmas is about family." A couple of relatives murmured agreement. Someone smiled like they'd been waiting for this. "About gratitude." He continued, eyes moving around at the table. "About love. About honesty." That last word landed wrong. Not loud. Just wrong. My stomach tightened and my fingers found the edge of the envelope under the table. My mother's smile stayed fixed, but her eyes flicked to my father, then away. Juliet's face brightened, expecting praise, expecting a spotlight. My father's voice stayed steady. "I'm grateful for the life we've built, for Vivian, for Juliet and the baby coming soon." Juliet's cheeks flushed. She looked around at everyone, soaking it in like sunlight. My mother reached for Juliet's hand, squeezed once, then turned her attention toward me like a warning without words. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs made a soft scrape on the floor. Not dramatic, just noticeable. Every head turned. My mother's smile tightened. "Isabel," I kept my voice level. "If we're doing honesty tonight, I want to add something." Juliet laughed nervously. "Can it wait until after dinner?" My father held his glass in the air a moment longer, then lowered it. "What are you doing?" I slid the envelope out from under the table and placed it in front of him. The wax seal caught the candlelight. My mother's face drained, fast, like someone had pulled a plug. Juliet blinked at the envelope. "What is that?" My father didn't touch it. His eyes stayed on my hands. "Where did you get this?" "From David Morris," I answered. Grandma Eleanor's attorney. One of my aunts leaned forward. Eleanor had an attorney. My mother's chair shifted sharply. "This is not the time." Juliet's voice jumped in, too quick. "Mom, what is she talking about? Why would Grandma leave something for her and not tell us?" My father's hand finally moved, not toward the envelope yet, just to steady his glass. The ice clinked once, small and loud in the quiet. "You should sit down," my mother told me, through her teeth. I didn't move. "Open it." My mother stood fully now, palms flat on the table. "No." Juliet's husband looked between them, confused, like he'd walked into the wrong house. "Vivian, what's going on?" A chair scraped near the middle of the table. An older woman in a dark cardigan stood up, slow but sure. I recognized her from a few holidays. Always quiet, always watching. Aunt Lydia, my grandmother's sister. She didn't look at my mother first. She looked at me. Isabel, she said softly, like she was giving me permission to keep breathing. My mother's voice cracked, then hardened again. Lydia, sit down. Aunt Lydia didn't. Let her do what Eleanor set in motion. Juliet's eyes widened. You knew. Aunt Lydia's mouth tightened. I knew enough. My father's fingers broke the wax seal. He pulled the papers out carefully, like they might cut him. His eyes moved across the first page, then the second. His face changed in stages, like he was losing control of it. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a sob yet, more like a warning to the room, a reminder of what she wanted them to feel for her. My father's lips parted. No words came out at first. Juliet leaned forward, voice shaking. Dad, read it. My father swallowed hard. Probability of paternity. He murmured, staring at the page. 0. The room froze. Juliet's hand flew to her mouth. No, that's not real. My mother's sobs came on fast now, loud and urgent, the kind that filled the space and demanded attention. This is cruelty, she cried. On Christmas. Aunt Lydia's voice cut through it, steady. This isn't betrayal. It's the truth. Finally getting some air. My father's hands trembled as he set the paper down. Across the table, my mother's eyes met mine. For a split second, the mask slipped. There was fear there. Real fear. Then it snapped back into place, and she reached for Juliet like I wasn't even in the room. No one said Merry Christmas. The plates stayed full. The candles burned down unevenly. Someone's phone buzzed and kept buzzing until my mother snapped, "Turn that off," like she could still control the room if she tried hard enough. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. My hands shook a little, but not the way I expected. It felt more like my body finally realized it was allowed to move. My father was still staring at the papers. He didn't look up when I stepped past him. My mother had one arm wrapped around Juliet, rubbing her back in tight. Repetitive circles. Juliet's face was blotchy, eyes wide and unfocused, like she'd just woken up somewhere unfamiliar. You can't just leave, Juliet said suddenly. Her voice cracked, thin and high. You've destroyed everything. I paused near the doorway. I didn't destroy anything. She pushed her chair back halfway, then stopped, hands braced on the table. This was supposed to be my Christmas. My baby's first. My mother cut in, sharp. Go. If you're going to do this, then go. I didn't argue. I opened the door and let the cold air rush in. The house stayed warm behind me, sealed and glowing, like it always had. Outside. My breath came out fast, white in the dark. I walked down the driveway without looking back. Halfway to my car, someone called my name. Isabel. Aunt Lydia stood at the door, coat already on. She crossed the driveway carefully and stopped a few feet away. Like she didn't want to crowd me. You did what Eleanor hoped you would, she said quietly. I didn't plan it like that. She nodded. Truth never looks neat when it finally shows up. We stood there a moment longer. Then she hugged me. Not quick, not performative, just solid. The days after blurred together. My father filed for divorce before the week was over. Word spread through the family in fragments. Some people texted apologies. Others went silent. 2 weeks later, my phone lit up with Juliet's name. Her message came through in one long block. She'd just given birth. Her body was still healing. Everything felt like it was falling apart. She needed me. For the baby. I read it once, then again. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the table. The house was quiet. For the first time in a long while. That didn't feel like punishment. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt earned. Aunt Lydia sat at my small table, hands wrapped around a mug, steam fogging her glasses. She'd come by with leftovers and stayed long enough to make the place feel lived in. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Before she left, she touched my arm. Your grandmother would have liked this place. I nodded. She would have, after the door closed. I stood by the window for a while, watching the bakery downstairs shut off its lights. I moved slowly, folding a dish towel, lining my shoes up by the door. Ordinary things, the kind I used to rush through. In the drawer by my bed was a card I hadn't opened yet. Samuel Hart's name was written on the front in careful ink. I knew it would still be there tomorrow. That felt like progress. I took a simple stocking from a paper bag and hung it on the wall near the radiator. No embroidery, no glitter, just red felt and a loop of string. I wrote my name across it with a black marker. Steady this time. Isabel. I stepped back and looked at it, long enough for the moment to settle. This wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about replacing what I lost. It was about choosing what stayed. I sat at the table and breathed. I thought about how much energy I used to spend waiting to be noticed, waiting to be invited, waiting to be forgiven for things I never did. That waiting used to feel like loyalty. Now it just felt heavy. I'm Isabel Crowe. I kept the parts of myself that survived. I kept the truth, and I kept the quiet. At Revenge Sins, we stay with stories like hers because they don't end with noise. They end with someone standing still long enough to belong to themselves.